My name is Byron Sommardahl. I'm the Chief Product Officer here at Esteemed, brand new, still getting to know the Esteemed crowd. And so if you haven't heard my name before or haven't seen my face, it's totally understandable, but super glad to get to do this lunch and learn. I don't know if you're actually lunching, but hopefully you'll definitely learn. There's something new that, or at least a new concept for a lot of people that we're going to talk about today that might open up some new horizons. Hopefully it will give you some new abilities, some new muscles that you can stretch and work. And so let's just jump right into it, shall we? So my goal for you today is to basically adopt a new superpower. I want you to be able to rapidly develop highly visible backend workflows to either prototype or test functionality that before even investing a cent into long-term solutions. The reason why this is helpful is because sometimes we jump into what we think is going to be our full-time or our main backend solution, but we're still kind of foggy on the details. We're not sure about exactly what we are going to need. We don't know about the things that we're integrating with. We're not accustomed to the payloads that are going back and forth, the different shapes of data. But nevertheless, we start coding our backends. We start coding our libraries to start consuming this thing or start doing this thing, and we're just kind of guessing. And we all do it. We can go ahead and admit it. Everybody does that, and it's totally okay. But what I'm going to present to you today is actually a better solution in my view. So some of the abilities that this kind of idea would give you is to be able to respond really to anything. You can respond, you'll see what I mean in just a minute. You can respond to different kinds of triggers, like something that happens over in Slack. You can respond to something that happens in a website. You can respond to something that happens in a Google Doc. You can respond to all kinds of things. And so you can imagine scenarios where you're kind of thinking about, okay, how can I build a prototype backend without building a full backend? How can I maybe glue a few things together, like a Google Sheet over here instead of a full-fledged database, a Slack integration over here instead of a full-fledged user experience, just to kind of prove out some ideas, and also to get used to some of the libraries or the integration points that we're going to have to be consuming. You can also, with this technology I'm going to show you today, you can also update a database. You can communicate. You can trigger other processes. You can log anything, anywhere. Lots of possibilities. So I'm just going to jump right in, because I know with these kinds of demonstrations, people really like to just see the thing that we can do. But before I do, I want to talk through a couple of the terms. So I've got this concept of workflows. Workflows are like functions. It's kind of like if you're coming at this from the AWS Lambda world or the Azure Functions world, then a function would be like one thing that it probably contains many things. So if you're trying to use a Lambda, for instance, to run a process that resizes an image and then compresses it and then crops it to a certain dimension, or sorry, a certain aspect, and then it uploads it to this S3 bucket, and then it also sends a message over there. All of that would be in one Lambda function. Now you could chain them together with some difficulty, but that's usually when somebody's building something like that out, they will do it with just one function. What I'm going to show you today is more like easily where data just flows not synchronously, but sequentially from one to the next. So we'll look at that here in just a minute. So you'll hear me talking about workflows, but you'll also hear me talking about steps. So a step is just a piece of the workflow. So you'll also hear me talking about accounts. One of the things that just really makes integration difficult for me a lot of times is just the various authentication methods that you have to jump through to be able to get to your data in different things. If you're integrating from a a backend perspective. So if you're trying to build a backend that's integrating or communicating with Slack or with Google Docs or with a CRM or a database or whatever, each one of those is going to have its own authentication method, its own style. They're going to every developer out there likes to reinvent the wheel. So you've got a million different ways to authenticate. And the tool that I'm going to show you today, PipeDream, actually abstracts that piece away and makes it a lot easier, especially while we're in kind of prototype mode. We don't want to like get into the weeds and spend a lot of time building prototypes. We'd rather just kind of be able to spin things up really fast just to prove out a point. And then you'll also hear me talking about sources and triggers interchangeably. And this is another thing. This is a pet peeve of mine with developers. I'm a software developer, by the way. I can have pet peeves about my own people, right? And one of the pet peeves that I have about software developers is that sometimes we don't try to have just one word to mean the same thing. So, the English language is full of this kind of stuff. It's not just pork, it's also pig. It's not just a chicken, it's a hen. We've got lots of words that describe the same thing. So in PipeDream's case, they have one of these annoying instances where sources is also called triggers in its own software. I like to call it triggers because trigger to me makes sense semantically. It has the right definition. So you'll be hearing me talk about those things. So different types of triggers. This is actually kind of interesting because when you are building something that is a prototype backend, especially when you're talking about API style backends, you're dealing a lot of times with one type of trigger, which is an HTTP endpoint. You also might be dealing with other kinds of triggers that come from WebSockets. There might be an event that happens in a WebSocket or a queue. You might be listening for things coming off of a queue, and so you respond to that. That's also a trigger. So in the world of PipeDream, you also have multiple types of triggers. So even down to cron jobs, you can do things that are like cron jobs in PipeDream, so you can simulate even those kinds of scenarios in your prototype. There's also the concept of polling. So if you want to be able to go and poll an API looking for changes every 10 seconds or so on or so forth, you could use polling. Also, you can use push style webhooks, which kind of goes back to the HTTP endpoints, right? So yeah, we've got quite a few different sources and triggers. I'll show you kind of the library of those in just a few minutes. Okay, so let's get into demo because I'm dying to show you how to do some stuff in this. So here's a business case that we need to kind of build out a prototype for. This prototype may or may not stay forever in PipeDream. We might build it there first, try it out, make sure that it works, and then we might move it into something else. Or it might just be a part of our library of maybe chat ops functions and workflows. So this right here would be kind of in the development team world, we would categorize this as chat ops probably. The idea here is that we want to be able to notify the team to shorten code reviews and the code review feedback loop. We want to notify the team when there's a new code pull request. Then we want to log board where we can say, okay, on this week, Greg put out the most pull requests, or Cindy this week is on the top of the leaderboard. And so we just want to put that in a spreadsheet. Then we want to notify the manager when the new guy submits a pull request, right? Who doesn't want to do that? That just sounds like a really good thing. So let's take a look at how we might be able to integrate or implement this little prototype. So I'm going to go over to PipeDream, which actually I'm going to back out. I wonder if I can just log out and log back in. Nah, you're smart enough. I'll let you figure out how to log in. Basically, you can create a free account with PipeDream, and then you'll be able to see what I'm seeing here. So feel free, please try this out on your own without waiting for me. So again, we want to be able to notify the team when there's a new pull request so that we can shorten that feedback loop on code reviews. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to go to workflows and I'm going to create a new workflow. So remember what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to put something into the Slack channel. First thing I got to do is I've got to trigger on something. Now look at all these triggers that are right here, all these potentials. So I can schedule, that's the cron job. I can go off of like a new row in Google Sheets. If I'm using Airtable as part of my prototype, really good idea, then Airtable would be good. You can go off of Telegram posts. You can go off of Slack messages coming through. GitHub, oh, there's our GitHub. So let's trigger off of GitHub. And oops, I want to go back and make sure I'm doing the right kind of trigger. So you can see here, I've got new branch, I've got new card, I've got new collaborator, all kinds of things. I want to say pull request though. So a new pull request. So for every pull request, I'm going to choose my GitHub account, which is opening this over here, and I'll just authorize. Oh my goodness, slowing me down. Don't look. Nobody look at my super secret code here. I love two-factor auth. Okay, so there. That's it. My OAuth, big pain, but I was able to accomplish it right here in this UI, and now my integrations are able to reuse this account, this OAuth, and it'll handle the refresh tokens and everything for me. So here I've got this little app called AnyHasher that I use for demos often. So I'm going to say I'm just going to give it a name. So it's descriptive. I'm going to say new AnyHasher PR. So here I am. I'm creating this new trigger / source. And I see I've got a pretty bad name here. Before I forget, I'm going to go ahead and give this a good name. I'm going to say new PR on AnyHasher notify team. So you can come up with your own name, your own naming conventions there. All right. So at this point, it's waiting for a new pull request. So let's create one. So I'm going to go over here to my repository for AnyHasher, and I was playing with this earlier and I created a pull request. So I'm actually going to delete it. I'm going to restart it, or I'll close it. All right, so now I'm going to go back into pull request, and now I'm going to act as if I am a developer, and I'm going to check in a pull request, or I'm going to start a pull request so that I can submit it for a code review. So hey, here's the new hashing algorithm.
Hey Byron, I'm wondering if the video effect you're using is causing excess, I don't know what it would be causing, but I'm getting quite a blurred view of your video feed.
Is it any better now?
It's a little clearer. Somewhat.
Would you rather me just use the screen share?
Yeah, I think
Let's do
maybe
it.
just the screen share would work.
Yeah.
And maybe
I'm gonna do that right now.
yeah, awesome.
And I'll also in Zoom try to change my camera. Yeah, thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought maybe it was something, but it looks like it's this is already looking clearer. So then when you change the camera to yourself, I can pin you back on the side. There we go.
Cool.
So if anybody, okay, great. It's a big improvement. Awesome. Amazing.
All right, nice. Okay, thank you for stopping me.
Yeah,
okay. So this algorithm uses the new hot library. All right, so create that pull request. So that is now, I'm gonna have to move this around. Hopefully you can see You can still see this, right? Because I moved the window.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Thank you. All right, so now you can see, now that I've created this, I've created a pull request, I've got a new event right here that I can choose from. So if I just click this event, then I can look at the entire, like the entire payload that was sent in. I can down to the headers if I want to. But this shows me the event, the payload that was sent in from GitHub, and I can see that there's a sender, there's a repository. I can say, okay, there's any hasher. So there's a lot of data here that I can act on. Now, before you say, oh, Byron, this is extra work, why would you do this? You could just use the GitHub, the GitHub app from GitHub in Slack. And yeah, you could, but you won't be able to do some of the things that we're going to do. So just keep listening. Don't turn it off. Don't turn me off here. So the next thing, I've got my event. Now I want to paste out to Slack. Now, before we go any further with Slack, I want to kind of show you the scenario that this might actually really help with. So here's Mr. Manager over here. He's saying, hey, everybody, are we ready to deploy? And then imagine 10 more minutes. What's the status of the new hashing algorithm? And then another 10 more minutes. Have we done the code review yet? Another 10 minutes. Anyone? And then we start posting passive aggressive emojis and Giphy images, trying to get the dev team to wake up and respond. Typical scenario, unfortunately, but that's how it works sometimes. So let's do something that will alleviate that problem at least for pull requests in that moment. So let's go over here. I've got my pull request. Let's go over here to the next step. Did you see how I just clicked the plus button? Super easy. Slack. And I'm going to go into Slack and I'm going to choose send a private channel message because that's what I've got. And I've got a few, you can't see this. Oh yeah, you can. No, you can't. You can't see this new window that just popped up, sorry. It's getting me to allow PipeDream to have access to my Slack channel. I didn't do it again. Yeah, okay, there we go. So now I've got my Slack account. Again, OAuth is completely taken care of for me. Now I can go to the AnyHasher channel. Now I can type in a message. So this right here is something that you can't do with the stock GitHub Git app for Slack. You can't customize the message. It's not a big deal, but it might be useful if you're hoping to add other links into the message. So let's say, hey, there's a new PR for code review. And then let's use Slack Markdown and actually put a link and a title. So because I'm in a step that's inside of this workflow, this step actually has access to all the data and the payloads from all the previous steps, which means I can go up in here and I can choose from results and I can find the data that I want, which in this case is going to be, I want the URL for not the repository, but for the pull request. So there's the HTML URL. The other URL is an API URL, which you could use like a GET request on, and GitHub does a really good job of using REST. I like all the REST goodness. All right, so there's the URL, and now I want to put the title in so that it actually links the title. So I'll go back up here and I'll look for the title of the pull request or the name, and there's the title right there. So I'll copy that. And again, here I'm not copying the data, I'm copying the path to the data, because this is going to be able to run for every new pull request in the future too. So there, I've got my text. I'm saying that there's a new pull request ready for code review. I give a link, very helpful chat ops. I'll just finish this off. There's a bot username I want to use. I'll use an icon image to make it pretty. And I'll use this. I want to turn off the link to the workflow because nobody cares about the workflow itself. I've got a little image over here saved, so I'm just going to copy that. You can use any PNG or JPEG. So I'm going to paste this in here for the icon image URL. And then the bot name, I'll just say GitHub. So that's it right there. I'll just test this. And we should be able to see over here. Yep. There is GitHub saying, hey, there's a new pull request for code review. Here's the link. Click it. Ready for the code review right now. So that's just, now we've only gotten we haven't crossed the finish line yet. We've only gotten to the point where we actually can tell everybody else, which is the same thing that the GitHub Slack app can do. So let's do something better. Let's take it another step. So remember the business case for this, the user story, if you will, is to log all the requests, all the pull requests to a spreadsheet so that we can create a leaderboard. And then we want to notify the manager that the new guy is submitting a pull request, which is, again, we can't do that with the stock app. So let's get into that. The next thing, again, I'm just going to add another step, and I've still got access to all the data from before. I'm going to choose Google Sheets, and I'm just going to add a single row. I could just do this with a database. There are apps in there for Postgres database, MySQL, SQL, all kinds of things. So you can't see me logging in, but it's asking me to verify access. I'm giving it my permission. Now I'll go over to spreadsheet. Oh wait, I need a drive. And this is going to be this drive, and then AnyHasher leaderboard spreadsheet. And then I'm going to choose a sheet name, which is PRs. And then, yes, this has the first row has the headers. Actually, here's my spreadsheet. See that? So this is just a regular Google Sheets spreadsheet, AnyHasher leaderboard. I've got a first row with some title. That's it. Come back over here, and now I can add in the date. Do when I can is to not just use create a date, because I might get it wrong, but I can just take the data from what I'm already doing, from what already exists. So I'll go here to sender, sender, and I'll just use the login name for the sender, and then committer. The name would be the name of the pull request. So I'll go over here and I'll look for coding yet. I mean, I can code. We will code in a second, but this is just super simple stuff. And I've been a programmer for more than 30 years. So I'm not new at this, and I'm not and so I could have the attitude like, oh, I'm a developer, I will never just point and click my way through coding something. But the thing is, when you've been coding long enough, you start to realize that it's actually a lot better to create real value instead of just more code. And so if I can answer some questions for my stakeholders about whether or not this thing is even viable, or if I can answer my own questions about whether this thing I want to do, this idea I want to try out in the back end is actually going to work, and if I can save money by using a prototype like this, or save time and be able to get to market faster, then any developer should be super happy about that. Who cares how you got there? Pointing, clicking, typing your way through it. Either way, we're here to create value. So that's my defense of I mean, I used to turn my nose up when I was a newer developer. I used to turn my nose up at point and click things, like low code and no code types of things, but they are wonderful for prototyping. All right, so there is my new row data. So now my leaderboard is off to the running. Every time there's a new pull request, all this stuff is just going to happen. So I'm going to go back over here, and now I'm going to notify the manager when the new guy is committing something. So I'm going to run some code. Now in this tool, I can either run JavaScript or Python. It knows me well enough, I guess, that it just chose JavaScript by default, but maybe, let's see if I could just do that again, go slower. Run some code. Oh, I guess here's where I can choose. Yeah, there we go. I can even do Golang, Python, Bash, all from right here. So let's just go ahead and do some code. So I want to catch the new guy. Scoff all you will, but this is actually kind of useful if you want to have a little bit more checkup on the new guy to make sure that onboarding is going really well, then this is actually a really good thing. So the sender, I'm just going to go by the login. So this is the new guy. So I'm going to say, so I've got my login, and if the login is the Sommardahl, then return true. Whoop, caps lock. Okay. Otherwise, we'll just return false. For some reason, I can never type when I know people are watching me. Isn't that weird? Okay, so catch the new guy. It's going to return true. I might even rename this to like is new guy. All right, so now I've got some code in there that has kind of set up a little branch for me. And well, maybe I don't want to do that. Maybe I want to say, here's another thing that you can do. So you can actually, I'm not looking at my keyboard. That's why I never learned how to type properly. Okay, so flow exit. I'm gonna put this down here. Let's say return true, and then if not, I'm gonna have it exit the flow. So meaning not new guy. So if it lets it past this step in the workflow, then it's the new guy. All right, cool. So now, if it's not the new guy, then it will just stop the entire workflow because I used this little special thing right here. Okay, so the next step would be to have another Slack. Now I'm going to DM the manager. So I'm going to say that the manager is, yeah, I'll just look for myself. There we are. And then I'm going to steal a little bit. I'm going to go back up here and copy from here. So there's the message, so I don't have to reformat it all. The exact formatting of everything. So I'm just going to say, hey, the new guy. I'm actually going to put the name of the person. So I'm going to say, we just use these double curly braces, and I'll say steps dot trigger event sender login just submitted request for code review, and then same thing for the rest of it. And I will go ahead and turn off the link to the workflow because it adds extra noise. So now if I click text or test, it's going to go ahead and post this over in my private channel, I guess maybe Slack bot. We'll see. Yeah, so there's a new direct message. And then there's a message from PipeDream to me. Hey, Byron Sommardahl, B. Sommardahl just submitted a pull request, and then I can click it. So this is kind of, we're taking this way farther than the stock GitHub actions or the GitHub Slack integration will take us. So there's some power here. This is chat ops through PipeDream. Okay, so the next thing I want to take a look at is this one right here. So I've got this one right here. Oh, where is it? Yeah, there we go. So the next, I'm going to switch gears to something completely different because I started off by talking about how great it is to prototype something. And while it's good to try things out for chat ops before you actually implement them into real backends, whether they might live a really long time in a prototyping tool or not, something like an actual backend API for an application, you would not want to leave in a tool like PipeDream long term. But it is kind of an interesting proposition to actually be able to build an API that serves data or even test data in a prototyping scenario, so that you can be building the front end while you've got a prototype back end that has very high visibility. What I mean by high visibility is that we actually are able to see all of the responses and the requests. We can see the shape of them. We can see what data is coming back. We can very easily set up different alerts and notifications to the dev team if anything goes awry at all. It's a beautiful experience to be able to build a backend with that level of visibility. So let's imagine that we've got a front end that's needing a backend, and we're going to build one endpoint in PipeDream that is able to route to multiple. And we're going to have, if we have enough time, we'll try to get through all three. We want to be able to create a candidate in the database. Then we want to be able to trigger the candidate's technical screening. And then we want to be able to mark the client as approved for the job in the database, so that then that would presumably kick off more workflows that starts emailing people over here and setting up accounts over there and things like that. So let's get into that. Let's try it. It wants me to deploy this. So I will show you this last thing. So now that I've deployed this workflow, I can see all of its events as it's happening. So if I were to, I'll just do one real quick. I'll close this one and I'll create a new one. Okay, so in pull request, I'm going to create a new pull request. I'm going to do a different branch this time, L4. And yeah, sounds good. Create pull request. It can't automatically merge it. I mean, those are other messages that you can add into your messaging. So another pull request. And if I wanted to, I could actually include this comment, this message in the chat message, but I'm not going to right now. So I'm going to create that pull request. And so now, without me having to manually do all of that, I can see that there was a request. It was successful, like there were no errors in the process. And I can actually go through and see all the data that was passed between all of these different steps. And then let's take a look over at Slack. There is my manager message, says another pull request. And over here in the Annie Hasher channel, there's a new pull request, and there's our chat ops message. So we're good there. Great. So I'm going to back up, and now I'm going to create a new endpoint. So this is going to be I'll call it, I'll stick with Annie Hasher. Main endpoint router. All right, so sorry, I went a little bit fast. Let me go back. I'm going to delete this and add another one. So I want to choose a trigger. I want to choose something that's going to kick this off. And if you're building an API, like a REST API, your natural trigger is going to be an HTTP endpoint. That unless you're using something like WebSockets, which most APIs are going to be built off of HTTP endpoints. So that's actually the very top one right here. Especially for me, it is my most commonly used trigger. I do a lot of endpoints. And then, so watch this, it's cool. I can choose how I want it to respond. So I can manage, I can give an automatic 200, and then it's kind of like fire and forget. So even if there's an error in the workflow, it doesn't let the client know that there was an error. Sometimes that's useful, sometimes not. I can also choose to give it no content, or I can give it a static response, or I can later on in my workflow, I can return a response. So I'm actually going to, I'll just do a 200 okay, because at this point I'm gonna route. So later on, I might want to tie that back in and actually let this endpoint throw errors if I wanted to. So I'm going to save and continue, and boom, it gave me a URL. Now, just for fun, I'm going to send this out to you. Really, really dangerous, but give it a try. You can load that up in your web browser if you wanted to. You could load it up in Postman. And what I want to do is I want to build up. I'm gonna build 3 endpoints into this one URL. Boom! There's already somebody's already hitting it in the browser. Good job. There's your IP address, by the way. Cool. So let me move this out of the way. Oh, that was you, Mr. Obert. Okay, so I can basically see all the different response or the different requests that are coming through. Even there's a robots.txt, so you can tell that a browser is trying to figure out if there are any robots listening. Cores, cool. So my next step is I want to be able to route this to another workflow. So I'm gonna add another right here. I'm just gonna run some custom code. And so here I'm going to say route to create candidate. So then I'm going to add in Axios here. So I actually there's a version of Axios that I like to use that works especially well with PipeDream. So it's actually in their platform. Platform library. All right, so I'm going to say if I'm going to say const route, and I'll just give it something testing for right now. So create. Okay, const method is post. So just to kind of give it some test stuff for right now, and I'm going to say if the method is post. And the route is, what would this be, candidates? I'll actually say route to lowercase because you never know with these web users and these programmers whether they're going to use capital letters somewhere. All right, so if we are posting to candidates, then we should return an await of Axios. And I'm going to say, I'll send the entire request maybe. So I can go back up here to the request or the results. And yeah, I wonder if I can. No, I'm not gonna just send it in carte blanche. I'm gonna actually rebuild it. So I'm gonna send in a method, which is post, and then a URL, which is gonna be something I need to get here in a second. And then I want to send in data, which in this case is going to be steps.trigger.event. I guess this would be the body, which doesn't exist right now because that last one was a get. Hey, if somebody wouldn't mind, post in something that kind of looks like a candidate with a JSON body that, you know, give me like a name and an email address or something like that. Just post that into that same URL. Interactive lunch and learn. Okay, so I need a URL. So in order to be able to continue here, I need another URL, which means I've got to go out, create another endpoint, and come back into this one. So I'm going to do that right now. New. This would be create a candidate. And this is another endpoint. I'm just going to say save. Now I've got my endpoint, and I'm going to go back into my router, and I'm going to paste this URL in for this post. So what am I doing here? I've got an endpoint that is receiving requests right now. And then it passes all of that data on to the next step, which is just JavaScript code. And I'm checking to see if it is, actually, I need to switch, I need to replace this with something. So this would be the path. So copy path. And I'm going to say that, and then really if route to lowercase is candidates. There we go. Yeah, sounds right. And just to not be messing up coming up with new words. There we go. All right, so I'm looking for the path from our event, which whenever I get a post in here, then it's going to show up here, that path, if it's to /candidates. I'll create a test one here in a second if one doesn't come through. So it's going to check for that candidate's path, and then it's going to check if it's a post. And if it is, it's going to basically resend the body of the previous request over to this other endpoint. So I'm creating a little router. And then I can do the exact same thing again for another one. So I'll just create another one here. This is going to be route to, it was trigger candidate technical screening. So trigger candidate screening. And I'll just paste the entire thing over here. And now I'm going to say post, yeah, candidate. Okay, so there's my new route. And so I need another endpoint over here. I'm just going to head right back out, and I'm going to create another. This is going to be handle candidate screening. Create a new endpoint, copy. I'm good. Now I can go back into my router and I'll just overwrite this other one. So pretty much everything else is good. Now there are probably 100 ways here to do a better job here. I could probably have all of this in one little step here, but for the purposes of this demo, I'm just going to make different steps. So now the last one is going to be approve for job. Paste this in. Candidate approval. So I'm actually going to change the other one also too. I think I like the slash better there. Okay, great. So I need another endpoint. I've got 3 routes here. Oh, the endpoint, Matt, the endpoint is still the same endpoint. It's the same endpoint that I posted in there before. If you still want to give it a try. So I'm going to go in here and create one more. This is going to be approve candidate job and add another endpoint. And now I've got my other endpoint for the approval, and I'm back into the router. And now I'm going to paste this URL in. So at this point, I'm for this prototype, it's prototype done, right? It's not production ready, but it's ready to start serving requests from a front end. So let's just see if we've got another endpoint or another request in here. All right, so no requests yet. I'm going to go ahead and generate a test request. So this is post. I'm going to go to candidates, and my body is going to be something like email. There's Matt, and then there's name. And then job ID. I'll leave that off. So this is good enough right now. So I'm going to send that HTTP request in, and I should be able to select it. Yeah, there's post candidates. Now I could test the entire workflow all together, all at once, but I'd rather just go a little bit slower. So I'm going to go to the next step, which is route to create candidate. So I'm going to test that. In the response, if I just get a blank response, that means it didn't send my response. It didn't send the request to the other endpoint, but it did. Gave me back a success because we just send. But if it were the other endpoints, it wouldn't have run this. Now I could even make this even more efficient, and I could like do this and then do a flow exit and sent create, so that when it's done, it stops the workflow and doesn't run the next steps. That's getting a little bit fancy. I mean, I'm actually okay with going a little bit faster, but if I were to try this next endpoint that won't run with the same request, which is to post candidates, then you see that there is no return, there is no value coming out of this step. So it didn't actually run what was inside of this if here. See that? It just didn't run it because it's looking for candidate screening, not just candidates. And this should be an S. And so should this be an S. This router now, it's now operational. As soon as this screen changes, yeah, it's operational. So now if anybody posts in using this route, like /candidates, whatever you post in, it's going to hit this router, and then it's going to, if it matches one of the routes, then it's going to pass it on to the next thing. So here's the next thing: create candidate. Let's just create it. So here's my trigger. It's already got a post in there. I can see what time it was. I can select that post and I can see what was in the body. Email and name. So we're good. Now this next thing I'm going to do, you could read if you're trying to follow along with me. I'm going really fast because I'm running out of time, of course. But if you look this up in the docs, you'll be able to find how to do what I'm about to do. But this is going to be save candidate to store. So I'm going to presume that I have some sort of, or I'm going to create a data store for my candidates. It's like a cache kind of temporary database that you shouldn't trust. It's not ACID compliant, but it's good in a pinch. Great for prototyping. So I'm going to add props, and I'm going to say candidates type, and this is going to be a data store. Cool. So if I refresh my fields, it's going to ask me for a candidate data store. So now I have to, right here, candidates, and I'll just save that. So now I've got access to this database that's kind of like a cache, almost like a Redis cache. So I'm just going to say await, because it's all async, and I'm going to say this candidates.set, and I have to give it a key. So I've got to give it a key and a value. So the key is going to be my, thank you for that post, by the way, whoever just did that. Steps, trigger.event.body.email. I'm going to let that be the actual. So then I've got my body, which is going to be my body out of the event, which I'm going to use as the value. And then my key is the email address. So if I test this, I should go ahead and just insert this candidate into my database. All right, it says it was successful, so let's just deploy that. So now that endpoint is ready for prime time. It's deployed, it's working. And just to confirm that it's working, I've got my data store for candidates, and there's Matt right there with his data. Cool. So let's go to, now we're going to approve the, we're going to handle the candidate screening, right? So now I'm going to, let's see, I'm going to trigger another one of these. So I'm going to say create, let's see, the router, and then I'm going to go in here and have another test event. So now this is going to be candidates screening. And I'm going to just say is an email address. We want to have the email address. That's all for our candidate screening. And while I'm here, I'll go ahead and, well, I'll go ahead and just test the workflow so that it triggers all of these endpoints. Then I'm going to go ahead, while I'm here, I'm going to go ahead and create another test event. And again, this is just the email address. I'm just trying to identify the candidate that is being approved, send that on in, test the workflow, Great. So we don't really need the router yet or for the rest of this this demo. So now I'll go into the the candidate can't handle the candidate screening. I've got my event. It's right there. And I'm wondering if I saw 2 in there. I'm wondering if I forgot to finish pasting the URL. Anyway, I've got my email address here. That sent that in as a string. Wonder what was going on there. Choose the other one maybe. Yeah, it's going in as a string. So there's something actually wrong. I've got 7 minutes. Can I do it? Let's see. If anybody has questions, now's a good time. I can kind of work while we're asking questions, answering questions. Is this cool stuff, or is this like, oh, I've seen this before? Okay, 7 is 9.
I think it's cool. I also think, like, maybe we were talking about this recently. I don't know. I talk about a lot of stuff in a week. Like, why is this better than Zapier or other, connectors? This is deeper into the back end and there's more functionality. Asking stupid questions.
Really, really great question. Yeah, really great question. So Zapier is stinking expensive. Like, if you've ever done a lot with Zapier, they charge you like crazy. It's very, very expensive. And this is just not. It's what they say is a very generous free tier. And I agree. I think it's pretty awesome. I pay for it because I use it now so much that because I'm constantly prototyping things and my developers do too. And so I'm happy to pay for it. But even what I'm paying is like $100 a month is 10 times more bandwidth than what I get for the same money from Zapier. Also, Zapier, they offer a coding option, so you can type JavaScript and Python into Zapier as like a type of action, but there are still limits to where you can go. You also are stuck in a very slow UI. So I used Zapier at length before, because I was also doing a lot of backend prototyping there. And I would recommend it for people that just don't have the coding chops. PipeDream is for developers, much more than it is for non-developers. Zapier is great for the non-developers. There are actually
what's
more.
The cost comparison? What's the cost comparison again with PipeDream? What is what's the cost average wise if I were to try to sell my client on switching to this?
Yeah, well, if I can log out of this one, maybe I can get into a pricing page. You want to look at the resource count. So like this is they charge by tasks. So for $49, I get 2,000 tasks per month, right? Then just go over to PipeDream. It'll make me log out. It's okay. Actually, no, maybe I can go to the upgrade. Okay, so for $19 a month, I can get 20,000. I mean, maybe I was underestimating my 10 times. So here I've got 2,000, and here I've got 20,000. No, so I was actually right on. So it's actually 10 times more output.
Right, but also half the price.
Way less money.
Yeah, half the price. So it's
yeah.
And
so,
more of the functionality.
So now mine is the organization. So I still get 20,000, but I'm able to invite other developers in to modify the same tasks and things. So that's helpful.
What it is, of course, adding a per invocation. We're not highlighting that. So what is an invocation? That's a put and a get or whatever.
Yeah, it's possible that I mean, a deeper comparison with exactly what all these words mean to get apples to apples would be interesting. But it's a guarantee. It's pretty close to apples to apples. Like for this, yes, it's every GET request, it's every step, it's every in Zapier every task. So it's every one of those little blocks that you use.
Yeah, honestly, I would say the only thing, you know, and I would be approaching this as more of a manager. So I will say, as a manager, I would agree with your prototyping analogy and your value analogy. I thought that was very important. You know, in other words, like a lot of developers don't think that way. And I always think that way. I always have thought that way. And when I was younger and encountered people like that, and certainly always will, oh, you know, I don't do it, or even like Drupal itself. Oh, you know, that's like, no way, you know, like screw, I like to build my own code. You know, I'm like, all right, bro. You know, like if you don't understand modularity, I don't really know what to tell you. Like we can't have lunch together. You know, and so I see this, and what I will say, the only drawback I would call out right away, which probably makes up for itself in specific use cases, is the limiting, you know, the amount of breadth that Zapier is bringing, right? So you have something like I saw like 900 apps or APIs there. I don't know how many are on Zapier, but I can tell you, like, you know, once you're into the edges of things that you want to connect, right? You know, you might fall short here, which isn't a big deal as long as you're playing in, you know, a certain family, I suppose, then it's going to be, you know, highly useful. On that one occasion, we're like, oh, I got to connect this, that, and the other thing, you know, and this is not present, then, you know, I suppose you would be driven to use something different, you know, to use Zapier possibly, or code up from the beginning, you know. So, but I would say a lot of times these connectors, these little things, oh, I need to have this, you know, right to that, and I'll put some stuff here, and, you know, so on. It's like really valuable, but I mean, you know, you're going to need to stop all the other things you're doing in order to do that. And it would be much better if it was done in about 20 minutes as opposed to, you know, a week.
Yeah. Well, so, not to lengthen this demo too much more, but one thing that's interesting is you can, I mean, once this code is in here, you can copy and paste it out to your IDE. Sure. You can start actually integrating it into a real library, deploy it to a real backend, and even start writing unit tests for it. Or you might just like completely throw it away. Okay, I proved the point. Now I'm actually going to write my test. I'm going to write my test first. I'm going to write my code the right way. But just the ability to see the output of a specific thing, a specific task that you just did, is massively useful. Most of the time when we're coding, we're like console logging things left and right, like that's a great engineering practice. And we're almost coding blind, or we're having these massive feedback loops where we click submit, and then we wait 30 seconds for a page to load and to run through a certain process, and clickety click here, there, and there. And all that time that we waste trying to debug and watch for responses and understand the shape of things is a massive time suck, and it costs our employers lots of money, and they don't get as much productivity for it. And so my point by showing you this today is to try to convince you to want to provide more concentrated value for your clients by doing some prototyping. This is one of those examples of slowing down to speed up. If you can slow down a little bit and get some better knowledge around something first, get some expertise around it using, and actually have a proof of concept, then later on it's gonna cause you to go a lot faster, and you'll end up going faster in the long run because you took this time. So I didn't get through my entire demo, but really great questions at the end. I'm in the Slack the Slack workspace for esteemed colleagues. So if you ever want to reach out, ask me questions, follow-up questions. If you want me to pair with you and help you build something in PipeDream, I'm open, available most of the time. Let me know. Thank you so much for being here and for hanging out with us.
Thanks a lot, Byron. We appreciate it.
Very, very cool.
Nice to see everybody, not see you, you know. Hey, everybody. Good to see everyone that showed up. Greg, Melanie, Cindy, saw Edgar show up. So anyway, great to see everybody that made it, and look forward to seeing you around on Slack and at future events.
Absolutely.
Awesome. I really appreciate it. It's just great.
Great. Cool.
Thank
All
you.
right. Any other questions or anything anybody wants to share? All right. Cool. Thanks,
You all have a great weekend.
Have a great weekend.